second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
I thank the member, and I call the member for Fairfax.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Look, I'm still relatively new to this parliament, but I have to say that already, sadly, I'm blown away by the utter incompetence of the people opposite. You know, amidst all the bluster and all of the frothing at the mouth that we've heard already this morning, the member for Lyons, who's otherwise, I'm sure, a very good man, obviously hasn't done his research because, Deputy Speaker, if he had, he would have realised that the very methodology being used for the collection of invalid welfare payments by Centrelink was actually created by the Labor Party, created by Richo, of all people. Now, they may not remember Richo, but since 1990, all Labor governments, you know, Hawke, Keating, Rudd, Gillard and Rudd again, have used the very same methodology that is being used by the coalition government today. Now, where there's been any tweaking, it was actually by the current leader of the opposition, Deputy Speaker, and so the Labor Party can hardly claim ignorance in this regard. You see, it's very simple. There are two sets of data. There's a set of data that comes in through the Australian Taxation Office, and there's a set of data that goes to Centrelink, indirectly from the recipient of welfare payments and directly from the recipient. Now, where there's a discrepancy between these two data sets, it flags in the system that money might be owed, that somebody has received possibly more money than what they are due. Now, this was also the case under the Labor Party. Labor, though, being Labor, Deputy Speaker, were just woeful in their execution and their collection. And so the coalition inherited the system in 2013, and we have stuck with it. Now, if there's a difference between Labor's system and the coalition system, is that the coalition has digitalised an otherwise archaic manual system that the Labor Party has been using. And so, Deputy Speaker, here's how it works. The computer basically identifies a potential mismatch between those two data sets. Where there's a discrepancy, a letter is triggered and sent to the recipient. 2 weeks goes by. If there has been no response, then if Centrelink doesn't hear anything, they trigger a second letter, Deputy Speaker, which is the fair and reasonable thing to do, because you never know whether or not the recipient could have received that first one. Now, if there's no response, or if the data discrepancy cannot be explained to justify the payments already given, then a third letter is raised along with a debt. The debt is then pursued and recovered, subject to all the normal appeal procedures, etc. Deputy Speaker, and all the discussions that are undertaken with Centrelink between the recipient and the agency. So that's what plays out in about 80% of the cases. In the other 20% of the cases, recipients are indeed able to explain the discrepancy. And for those, there are no debts collected, and the case is closed. A normal, responsible process, one that the Labor Party was woeful in trying to execute themselves, that the coalition is doing very well. Now, Deputy Speaker, the member for Lyons mentioned about the coalition thinking everyone's dodgy and who's collecting welfare. That's unfair and an absolute porky. I personally believe there's no doubt there are dodgy people out there. Absolutely, I'm sure there are. But I believe that the vast majority of people who receive welfare in this country are good, honest, decent Australians. Good, honest, decent Australians. Now, I don't know about you, Deputy Speaker, but if I inadvertently owed a debt, I would like to be told about that as soon as possible. As soon as possible. That's the reasonable thing to do. Now, Labor is not arguing against the methodology. Labor is not arguing about the need to collect debt. What they're arguing about is the digitalisation, the efficiency by which this is done. They're happy for this archaic manual system to not tell people about it for years and years to come and then give them a nasty surprise at the end. And look at the scoreboard, Deputy Speaker. At the end of the day, we've already had $300 million collected by this. The forward estimates say $4 billion will be collected by this system. This goes to the heart. We have about $170 billion in our federal budget for welfare. There's only one side that is taking it very seriously to ensure that every dollar and cent of taxpayer money spent by welfare is due. Now, Deputy Speaker, I support this, and thank God we have the coalition in government.
I thank the member. The question before the House is that the motion be agreed to.